All right. So, Promineo week 14, I believe. Yeah, week 14. Sorry about that. This week we had to create an app that enables us, it enables users to vote and leave reviews on a movie. So I decided to actually combine this week's challenge with another challenge from frontendmentor.io. Um, and I do have notes this time, so hopefully it's a little bit more succinct. I did decide to host this app live and make it full stack, so I don't know how you're going to be able to download the code and run it, so I'm going to make this a long form video to kind of explain and go through the code internally. But this is Movie Rater. The requirements for it for the project were essentially that I had to have a movie list, that I had to have a an individual movie component, I had to have a stars component, a review component, and a review form component. And then for the front end mentor challenge, I had to have a bookmarks option for users, and I also had to have a featured videos feature inside as well. I decided to challenge myself a little bit. I gave it a backend database as well, which was Postgres. And then I also used trpc for the backend route handler, and then used nextjs for a framework for React for page rendering, and I even used nextauth for authentication purposes. I also decided to allow importing of multiple user reviews into the application. As far as things that I need to go over for the project, whoops, wrong way. VS Code, where you at? Crap. I didn't open it. Travis, you're so prepared. You spent all your time in OBS and none of your time in getting the actual stream ready. This is my life. Boop. There we go. As you can tell by the link here, it is actually hosted on Vercel. But this is the entire project. Things that I wanted to go over with you today are essentially the component for movies, which I have named Movie Thumb. It's a component that takes in all of the movie props. No longer need that. For each of the movies that get displayed inside of the app. And it takes in a title, a year, an array of strings, which is thumbnails, a rating, a category, and an ID of the movie that it's taking in. And it populates essentially a component as well as that includes an image, as well as all of that content, and a link to the individual movie page. These are actually rendered inside of another component, which I have titled content list. It will essentially map out data. It'll map out those movie thumbs based on a filter that I've set, which is another feature that I built into it. I built a search feature inside of it, which is just a simple use effect that allows you to basically debounce the what's the word I'm looking for? Like the user input by about 500 microseconds or something like that. Let me save that file. So that's the movie as well as the movie list. Next up is supposed to be a stars. Stars component is actually right here. It's just an SVG file that gets returned. When it gets mapped out, it actually, I don't know that I have a component to map out multiple stars. I think I just did array 5 or something like that. Yeah, there we go. Star rating component. It will essentially map out the review inside of the app for you. I basically just mapped it out based on the reviews that get brought in I think it's rating. Yeah, there it is. Array.rating. There it is. Basically, I take in a rating inside of a review element, and then use that rating to map out the star element. Could I have put it in there? Probably. I didn't. Um, but that essentially is the stars component. Next up is the review component, ironically, which contains the stars component. It is basically just an article element that loads in a couple of different things, which includes the date the review was created, or updated for that matter, as well as the rating, the current user of the system, the user, and the movie that it's tied to with an ID, as well as any comment that was left on it and the ID of the current review. It uses all of those in order to be able to delete and get user information within the review component using React Query. It will load in a user icon, as well as any comment and the review, and it will add in the date using a utility function, said convert date, which will, if there isn't a date, it'll basically use today's date. But if there is a date element that gets passed to it, then it will say, date.get full year, date.get month, and .get date, and return a string with those interpolated inside. Then after that, it will say, hey, is the current user equal to the user that is tied to this review? If it is, then I want you to show the edit review options. If not, return null, which basically does nothing. And then if it is updating, then I want you, which is just a use state boolean that I set up here. Basically what happens with that is a user can click on, when this is in here, a user can click on the icon, and that makes a little pop-up menu appear by toggling this state variable is updating, and that will show the update review form, which is just a form that allows the user to update the comment, the comment and the review number. I used React Hook Form to maintain the state of this form and then handle the submit as well through it. It basically, it was probably one of the cooler features that I got to tie into, or the cooler things that I got to tie into, because it basically, I could create my own validation schema using a library called Zod. Which actually I don't think I need this. That might be what it is. Oh, I know. The TypeScript compiler is yelling at me, and it's because one of these is a type. Yeah, there it is. So let's do this. We'll go and pop that down there. We'll pull this out, and we'll type in type. There we go. So you can actually pull in Zod to create some validation for you. That way, when a user clicks submit on this form, it's capable of generating some reviews or some errors that's based upon that schema. And if the user input, say, string is not 5 characters long, or review is not at least 1, you can actually show the user an error message for them to be able to view, which is really cool. The React Hook form basically takes in that validation schema, and then on submit runs that validation schema. The only weird thing about this was that the rating component that I did was not technically an input component, or one that is a form component, I guess, like one or element that basically a form would interact with. So I couldn't really use the register feature on the React Hook form. So instead I had to pull in the where is it? The trigger function, which basically it returns a promise. So I just voided it. I didn't care about that. So I just said trigger the validation of rating, and it does that, and it tests it really quickly for you. Which is and then if it doesn't do it, then it doesn't submit the form. It just shows the error. But if it does, then it runs post update, which is actually a function to my server, which is a mutation that's above. Things I want to go over. I think that's good. Let's log into the app. The app is tied behind authentication. I chose to log in with Discord just because it's easier. It's super simple to set up Discord. You can actually just go in and app, developer app portal. We'll go here. You can go to OAuth 2 general, and this is where you basically get your client ID, and then your you set a callback URL, and this will actually allow you to authenticate your users using Discord. And it looks like this for the user. So you'll click login. It'll ask you, hey, do I have permission to view this user or use this user? You can click authorize, and then what it's going to do is it's going to set a session for you. It's going to create this user for you, and then it's going to that's interesting. That's a Chrome feature that I'll have to take a look at and edit. It's not a problem that I saw before. It'll actually log you in, and it'll use your user profile image directly from Discord, as you can see down here in the bottom left-hand corner. If a user doesn't want to sign out, then they can just click sign out. Alternatively, if you log in and you want to maintain the session does get maintained actually on load. Pretty simply, it doesn't ignore the session. You can go to app and it'll redirect to dashboard pretty simply. That's actually done on the dashboard. I believe it's the index, or is it an app? I forget where it is, but it basically preserves the session, and like when you load the app, it checks to see if a session exists and if it's valid, and if it does exist, then it redirects you to the dashboard with that user in tow. Users are capable of setting their own bookmarks. That'll reload the page and set the bookmark on any subsequent posts. They can view content by movies, by TV shows, and by pages that they bookmarked themselves, as well as view the dashboard to see any trending content. In addition to this, they can search out they can search out movies with Beyond Earth, right? If I stop typing, that's when it waits the 500 microseconds. That's what debouncing is the concept of. Every time that I type a character in, it resets that timer for that 500 microseconds. But if I ever pause for that time, then it becomes even more it allows it to essentially run through. If I wanted to show you a little bit more exaggerated version of that, let's see here. Here we go. Let's set this to 2.5 seconds and then go back. And then, oh, you know what? It's not going to do it because it's not pushed up to the prod. Well, never mind. Basically, if you stop typing, then it loads. Undiscovered. See? Let off my fingers and it goes. See? All right. But that is the front end mentor stuff. Let's get into the reviews. This is actually something I wanted to surprise you with. Hang on. You didn't see that. When the reviews load, it actually shows the average reviews for the thing. Currently, it's listed as no reviews because no users have left one. If a user tries to submit the post, it loads up those validation errors. It says a rating must be at least 1, and a comment must be must be longer than 5 letters. The page is there it is. Go back over. Fully responsive. Go back over. Fully responsive. It will scale up and down all the way from mobile to desktop and changes the nav bar based on the input or based on the page. I can't go lower than 290, but you're not going to have a phone that's going to be lower than that anyways. But that is the responsiveness of the layout. A user can type in a review. This is my review, and then leave a review. Actually, let's make it a little longer. I have never watched the movie 2019, but I'm sure it was forgettable compared to the monster of a movie that came out next year. Let's say the following year. Haha. Click submit. You'll post the review. It then recalculates the average review based on your input now and updates it. You can also update the review. JK, please don't delete my video, YouTube. And then update it because oopsie daisy, I didn't mean to give 2019 that bad a review. And then it updates the UI here as well, and shows you when you reviewed the post. Alternatively, there is another feature in here. If another user has at any point reviewed it, I got my coworker Josh to do it for me because I don't have another Discord account. But it will actually bring in Josh's review, and as you can see, it doesn't allow me to edit it because he's not the current user. He is able to edit it, but I am able to edit my own. But I don't like the fact that I gave this this is my test comment, further testing, more testing. That was as I was basically finishing out this component. I kept testing and testing and testing. But say I deleted this, I didn't actually watch the year 2019. We'll delete that. And boop, it gets released, and Josh is now the only one that's reviewed. I have watched this movie now. Ha 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 ha. Mandark. I'll give it a review. Let's give it a 5. Post it, and boosh, it gets posted to the website. Yeah, that's the functionality. I had to figure out why this isn't doing that, because if you actually go into Firefox, I bet it's just browser compatibility stuff, if I had to guess. Yeah, it's browser compatibility stuff, because if you look at it on crud, go out of full screen. If you actually look at it on Firefox, this is the intended purpose, and I bet it's because it's the classes that I use to describe it. So we'll use Firefox for now, because that's the way that it's supposed to look. We'll go, oops, I wanted to go right. If I wanted to explain how this works, let's see here. On load of the dashboard layout, it checks for session data, and if the session data isn't there, it will push the user back to the login page. That's the landing page, essentially. That's the slash. That's all done using use session, which is just a feature that's available inside of Next Auth. You basically can check to see if the session is present. That page renders out the index of whatever is in the if you go to the dashboard, it'll register, or it'll load whatever the index.tsx within a directory is, essentially. So in this case, right, so nextjs has a pages directory. Inside of the pages directory are going to be a couple of different folders. One of them is going to be dashboard. Another is going to be disclaimer, sign in, but you'll always have an API folder, and the API basically controls how your API functions on the front end. There is another one that's called server, which kind of tells you how it behaves on the back end as well. In this case, I used a framework or I guess not a framework, but like a utility for building up a Next.js app, which is called Create T3 app, and it's because it basically spoke to me on another level. It used Tailwind, I think it's Tailwind, trpc, and TypeScript, three T's essentially to set up a good framework for a project. And it allows for type safety throughout the entire project. So I can get type safe definitions from my back end to my front end all in one singular project. And that's why I wanted to use it so much. I thought it was really cool. Plus, I wanted to learn Next.js after it was talked about during class. And I was already using React and React Router, so I figured I'd just use Next.js and do it that way. So inside the pages directory, inside of my dashboard, I have a couple of other directories. These directories all have an index.tsx as well. So if a user ever goes to whatever my app's URL is /dashboard/bookmarks, right? It'll land on this page. And what bookmark does is it generates a bookmark list based on the data that it gets passed from my API. My API has a couple of different routes. It says this one is a me route with the handler for get bookmark movies, and then it's wrapped in a React query use query, which returns essentially a data, a couple of status functions like is loading and is fetching, and then a couple of other things like I think you could pull out. There's so many things that come off of React query. I think there's refetch, is refetch error, there's is error, there's is error, loading error, is paused. There's so many different things that come off of React query if you're not using the library, and I highly recommend that you at least learn it just once. But it passes that data down to the content list. Bookmark movies essentially will it takes in the user that's currently logged in from the session, right? And it does so with Prisma. It does so with trpc. So trpc receives a context which contains the session on it, as well as the current Prisma client. Context, you can off of the session, you can actually pull the ID of the user off. And so I run a Prisma search, say, hey, the current Prisma client, I want you to get me from the users. I want to find a unique user where his ID is equal to the ID of the current session user. And I want you to select the bookmarks. I then, excuse me. I then, so that's the user's bookmarks, which are essentially an array of strings. I then take that string, or sorry, it's an array of a bookmark Prisma element. Prisma file looks like this. Bookmark has a couple of features on it. It has an ID of the bookmark created at, as well as a movie title, a movie ID, a user, and a user ID that the bookmark is tied to. I take these movie IDs, I map them to a here it is. I map them to an array, and then I use that array to find any movies that's ID is contained within that array, and then I return those movies back to the user. And that is actually, as you can tell when I hover over it, it is statically typed to an array of movies. Now you can get undefined or null from a request, but that's just a matter of just checking to see if that's been posted or not. And that's basically recycled throughout all of these different routes and handlers. That similar logic to that. You can take in inputs in these handlers that are validated via Zod as well, just like how the React hook form was. In order to be able to do specific things with those IDs. For example, if I wanted to set, like in the reviews, right, if I wanted to, let's collapse these guys real quick. That way it doesn't become too much. If I wanted to, for example, create a review, I take in a movie ID, a rating, and a comment inside of the input, and then I get access to that input inside of the mutation that's provided by, I believe it's trpc. Yeah. Yeah, it's trpc. So you could take in that input, and then you can use the current Prisma client to create a review with the following data. This is all data that I pulled in: a user ID, a comment, a rating, and a movie ID based on the um, on the input and the user session. And then technically I return it. It just basically returns true. That's all I really care about. You can do a similar thing with the update review, which is essentially go away Slack. Takes in an ID, a rating, and a comment, and then it finds a current one where its IP ID matches the ID of the review that gets passed in, because there's only going to be one with that ID because it's unique. And then you're going to update it with the data that comes in. There should probably be validation on this side of things. I just didn't do it for this simple of a project. Actually, one of the reasons why I think Prisma is so cool is because when you want to run when you want to see your data in like the tables and stuff like that, sometimes spinning up like a Postgres system is essentially it's painful, to say the least, to set up a database locally and stuff like that. But if you use Prisma inside of your project, you can actually use npx Prisma Studio, and that will load up an in-browser viewing table for you to be able to view all of your tables, and as well as user data and session information, right? These sessions expire after a certain period of time. There are 8 bookmarks currently saved within the system. All of them are tied to one user, which is my user. Josh didn't click on anything. There are currently 29 movies. That's what I should say about this. I didn't pull in movies dynamically. Instead, I created Postgres tables of the movies, all containing different properties on them. Each one of them containing different reviews. I think that's pretty in depth. I wanted to go over average reviews, and that's the last thing that I have written down on my thing. It seems to be a little bit scattered, but hopefully that's good enough for you. Let's see. I wanted to do average reviews. It's going to be in my components. Actually, I don't even have time to do this. Average review. There it is. Oh yeah, that's right. I actually calculated it inside of, I believe it's under reviews, and then because this one was an interesting one. There it is. Get average reviews. This one was an interesting one. I found I basically I get all of the reviews where their movie ID matches the input of the movie ID, and then I used a reduce function on the array, on the resulting array, and then divided that by the movie.length. If the number is not a number, then I return 0. Otherwise, I return a rounded version of that number. That way I don't get a bunch of decimal points, especially for my rating component. Then what I do is, if this is 0, actually this will be a great idea to show it. Inside of the, where is it? Movie details. There we go. Inside of the movie details, I believe, yeah, I pass in an average review. Says, hey, if there's an average review, I want you to, I want you to, there's a div that contains 5 stars, right, mapped inside of it. And then inside of that div, I have another div that's positioned absolute to 0. It has a height of full, and it has a background that's the same color as the background that is of the actual AP or the actual app. And then I dynamically set that element's width by 5 minus the average review times 20%. So it grows more and more. As the review goes down, essentially, and that actually just kind of renders itself looking like if we went in here, it actually shows up here. So if I inspected this, yeah, see, there's that little absolute div right there that's going to cover up everything. If I increase this, I would put it up to 50, see, 50%, right? Or 70%, right? 100% closes them all out, right? Yeah, so that's pretty cool. That's how I handle the reviews component. I think that's all the project that I have for now. If you have any questions, feel free to message me on Slack.